Welcome to One Man of Many. My name doesn't matter because I'm just one of well over 1 billion people that we have on this planet who has his own opinions, just like you have your own opinions. Mine are no better than yours, yours are no better than mine. But I don't necessarily know your name, therefore why do you need to know mine? These are just the ramblings of a middle-aged man on his drive home from work. And nothing more. I do appreciate you listening and, joining me here for this time together. Don't know how long I'm going to speak, but we'll see how it goes. I wanted to talk in this episode about not so much the election of 2020 between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, but more about a few things pertaining to the election and the future. I'm not going to get really political because my goal isn't to try to convince you that if you voted for Trump, you wasted your vote because he's a fascist or he's a racist or something like that. Nor am I going to try to convince you that if you voted for Biden, that he's just a senile old fart that hasn't accomplished anything during his entire tenure in the Senate. That's not what my goal here is. I don't have any intention of trying to change your mind because that is not what this is about. Change your mind is something completely different. Now, this is also not going to be political. I'm simply going to talk about my thoughts and ideas about a few things pertaining to the presidency and the election system. In the future, I would really love to see a different election process. I am so tired of our current system that changes pretty much every single election. Most of the time, in the past, it has been a system where we count up the votes on the day of the election, or the night of the election, I should say, and then we announce at some point or have a concession speech or something to the nature of the victory and the loss, and then we know. But as of tonight, it is Friday, November, the 6th? And for some strange reason, we still do not know who is going to be our next president. And I understand that there are laws in place. Like, for example, you can drop a ballot in a mailbox in Pennsylvania all week of the election, and as long as it's postmarked by Friday, at least this is my understanding, it will still be accepted and counted next week. But the whole purpose behind not starting to tally up the votes until after the polls close, or at least you're not allowing any more people into the line, is because you don't want there to be tampering with the election results. You don't want people to suddenly say, oh, my candidate didn't get as much of a turnout. Quickly, get more people down there, or perhaps voter fraud. Somebody try to cheat the election. Well, at the time of this podcast, there's a lot of talk about cheating and falsifying election results, and suddenly these ballots just appeared, or in the middle of a field in one of the strongly Republican areas, a bunch of Trump ballots have shown up. Look, here's the fact of the matter is, there is so much corruption that typically happens with regards to government. How are we going to ever account for it all? Is this the one time that we're going to be able to look at it and say, oh, we're going to be able to stop it all? No, there's a lot of corruption that goes on. And I understand that sometime in the future, we're going to be doing only electronic voting. I remember when I first started voting a couple of decades ago, there was a process that we would go in and we would look at we'd take the little, I don't want to say Scantron, that was what we used in school, but we would take the little ballot and we would stick it in the machine, line it up properly, and then punch through there, and then it would be registered. And if they needed to manually count, what they would do is they would look at each and every ballot and look for the hole punch on 7 or on 8, and that would tell you if it was going to be Clinton or Dole or what have you. That's the way we used to do it. And now we're doing a hybrid system. It's done on a computer, and at least in my county, we did it on a computer. Then we printed it out, took our ballot over, handed in our card, and slipped our ballot into the machine, which counted it before putting it into a big old bin. And it said, after it scanned it in there, ballot has been casted. Well, if we are doing it by computer, then we need to be doing it by computer. Whenever you print something up and then scan it, I understand there's an accounting system that goes into it, and it might be a redundancy type system. But here's the thing. Not all counties across the entire world or across the entire country are doing it the same way. I understand we have election machines, but from the videos I've seen of people posting about results being counted up and tallied, I haven't seen one person yet that seems to be using the same kind of system that we use in my state. Does that mean that those videos are fake, or does it mean that they just have different systems across the country? Well, I don't know the answer to that, but what I do know is that there's a big push for doing online voting. But before we do, there has got to be a better system, and I do have a proposal for that system. Now, I'm not into ironclad security that cannot possibly be hacked. I'm not a master or a whiz or any kind of an authority on such things. But what I can tell you is whatever the system is needs to be tried. It needs to be true. We can't have all these technical glitches that suddenly gave one candidate more than another, or at least those are the reports that we're hearing. And anything like that. It needs to be something that is ironclad, tried and true. They've used it a bunch of times, even if it's on test results, and they have just gone through and randomly ticked the boxes a bunch of times and submitted those as ballots, and we just have a team of people pressing the button all day long in order to register fake votes, in order to fake tally them up, and then fake elect somebody for some fake office. That's the way we need to do it. Test it out, make sure there's no glitches in the system, and then roll it out nationwide. Everybody needs to have the same thing. Now, if you have some sort of a system where you log in online, then the question is, what happens in the little rural areas where they don't have online? Can you call up and say, I would like to cast my vote for this person? Well, that may or may not be an option. Probably not if we're moving into the 2020s. But there needs to be a system where we collect all the votes on a proprietary system, and no one can see those results until the very, very end, when everything has been tallied together. You then connect up all the machines to one central hub that downloads them all, and then it uploads them all, and then those machines are verified and certified as being accurate, the same way as a Guinness Book of World Records person that plays a video game and is trying to score a high score from like a 1980s video game. The Billy, whatever his name is, the world record holder that was a master of pretty much every game in the 80s. There's now a system in place where if you are going to try to break one of the records on an arcade system, what you need to do is get an original certified board, drop it into a machine, play your game, get your high score, take it out, and then send off that board to be verified as not tampered with. And this needs to be done in some sort of an official capacity. That is, as I understand it, and as I saw it in this documentary, the accurate way of verifying a result. There needs to be some sort of a similar thing where technicians, one of each party if you want to, go out and verify the machine is working correctly. And there should even be some sort of security encryption where the computer system will pick and choose a random number for each candidate, and it will keep track of that. Where, let's just say, if there's a 16-bit number, there's going to be a whole bunch of combinations it could potentially choose from to elect the Republican, the Democrat, the Libertarian, the Green Party, or even a write-in. Generate it and have it be something that is unknown until the encryption code from whatever system, the master system for that location, is put together with that individual computer, and it says, okay, here's the encryption code, and suddenly it decodes whatever it is, it puts it into the system, and then that system is uploaded or taken to a place where it can upload to the internet, into the cloud. We don't need to have everybody going online and doing it from home, because there could definitely be someone that had just died, or an elderly person who still gets their mail at a certain location, and whose very political child or grandchild or anybody really could get a hold of their login information and decide to take their vote from them. There's a lot of potential garbage in that system, and we don't need to have it be something that can be manipulated, because it could be very easily manipulated, which is one reason why I definitely think we need to have some sort of security protocol put in place where it can verify identity, whether it is a national ID card or a voter ID card or whatever. There needs to be some sort of a system that we put into place that verifies every single person that's going to vote. So that way we can verify that they are legally able to vote one time in one particular region, not absentee and in person, not on behalf of someone else, whether they're alive or dead, but it needs to be an accurate solution. And I'm not going to champion the politics of one particular party. What it needs to be is some sort of a system where we try to get the many votes as we possibly can in there to give a better, accurate representation of the people and what they want. Because that's the whole purpose behind an election, right? If only a third of the people in the entire population that is legally able to vote decide to vote, then a third of the population is choosing who the next president is. If they are all, let's say, voting for the same candidate, but the rest of the country that's not voting would actually go for the other candidate, then the smaller minority group of people is going to make the decision for the country. And I personally do have my own politics that I would appreciate if they were always voted in the direction that I vote. But at the same time, I understand that, just like with this podcast, my opinion is no better than anyone else's. And collectively, if there is an overwhelming majority of people that want a Republican candidate, it should be a Republican. If an overwhelming majority of people want a Democrat candidate, it should be a Democrat. We need to have those people in office that represents their constituents the best. Now, on that note, I will add something else. When we do our election, and suddenly we tally up everything, send it up to the cloud, there needs to be one type of a press conference where we get together, the Republican and the Democrat and the Libertarian, the Green Party, whoever wants to be there, and then they say, and the president is, and then press a button and it's revealed. Kind of like how the Academy Awards use PricewaterhouseCoopers, I think it is, to do their tallying up of votes, and then they certify the results as an independent company, and then they're in charge of it. They're in charge of the whole process and keeping it secure until the ballot is open, or until the results card is open, and that's when we see who won. That would be a very nice way of putting it. That way we're going to eliminate corruption, and we're going to have a system that just tallies it up, and then you press a button and it tells everybody in the world who it's going to be. We don't need to have multiple days where everybody is tuned in watching for a progress bar that's not moving across. We don't need to be having the entire country tuned into Fox, CNN, MSNBC, whoever, trying to get some sort of an election result, and in the meantime hearing all these stories about corruption going on and ballot harvesting and all the different things that you hear about on the side. We need to have the media uninvolved in our election in every possible way. All it does is it amps people up. That would be very nice. But here's the thing that I would also say regarding who we put into office. The whole idea of the two-party system, I think, needs to go away. How do you do that? Well, it's easier than you may think. Only a couple of decades ago, we had a system in place where we would have multiple different people that would run on the Republican ballot, and multiple different people that would be, wanting to run on the Democrat ballot. And we would listen to each one of them, where they stand on certain issues, and then whoever was getting the biggest push would be the person that was chosen as the candidate. And right now, the way it currently is that if you are a Republican, you must have this stance on abortion, this stance on taxes, this stance on, and the same thing on the Democrat side. You have to have these particular standards and opinions if you want to be the front runner, unless you happen to be a random outlier that just so happens to get a lot of attention and do very well in the polls, and you become the front runner for your particular party. But in all honesty, I don't think we need to have the two-party system anymore, because there's plenty of good candidates that are running that are not given attention in things like debates simply because they are not one of the two front runners in the party. Do we really need to start with 20 different candidates, whittle them down to 15, then 10, then 5, then 3, and then finally we work it out and get one candidate that is going to represent the Democrat Party, then one candidate that's going to represent the Republican Party? Those two people go together, and then they're going to potentially change their views based on what the party says is going to get them the most votes. So Republicans and Democrats are going to basically have opposing views in most things, because that's the only way you're going to get people to join. If you had two candidates that were almost identical in every single way, but one of them was pro-life and the other one was pro-choice, and that was the only thing that separated the two of them, and those were the two front runners for the Republican and Democrat Party, then it would come down to which candidate was going to support pro-life and which candidate was going to support pro-choice. But that would have already been chosen by the time we get to those two candidates, that those are the two major issues that America would be interested in, because everything else we agreed on. We agreed on what needed to be happening with taxation. We agreed on what needed to happen basically with regards to everything. Coronavirus was big this year, for example. Fracking, we could talk about that, and leadership roles, and what would we do, and how would we do this in the future, and how is it going to affect everybody? Is it a mandatory vaccine? Whatever. We could talk about this if you really wanted to. But if everybody's opinions and thoughts were the exact same, it would boil down to which candidate did you like the most because of what they represent differently. Do we need to align with a particular party, though, just to have a party that you can vote to? The Republican National Committee, or the Democrat National Committee, the DNC, RNC, whatever it is, and you donate your money to it, and then they will put money into their candidate, just like you could donate to the candidate and they'll put money into their own campaign. It'd be much better to have a system where if you are a person that wants to run, you run. And you don't have some organization behind you. You simply have your donations that come in from people or companies if you want to, and that would be a matter of public record. But whatever the case may be, you have your votes that come in for you, and then you move to the next level, then the next level, until we get down to a few candidates. And when we're down to the last 3 or 4 candidates that are going to run in this election, at that point we do a vote. And then we see who is the leading 2 candidates. And then from that, you vote again. Now, why do I think that we need to vote twice? It's very, very easy. Let's just say we have a guy like Joe Biden, who stands for exactly what Joe Biden does. And we have 3 guys that are like Donald Trump, let's say. But they're not exactly alike. They're slightly different with slightly different policies. And let's just say those 4 people run against each other. Well, if you like Biden and what he stands for, you're going to have one candidate to vote for, and that's going to collect all the votes. But if you are one of the people that would like one of the 3 Trumps, then you're going to split the vote between the three Trump people. And let's just say that a third of the votes went to Biden and the other 2/3 of the votes went to the Trumps. Then the entire country would basically want someone that was more Republican-minded than a Democrat-minded person. But 1/3 of the entire voting population would have chosen Biden when the country really would have preferred someone more along the lines of Trump or one of the Trumps. That is the reason why I think that you look at the two front runners in that first preliminary election and you choose the two major candidates and you put them against each other. Because people like third-party independent candidates will split the votes. Bill Clinton ran, Ross Perot was running against him, and Ross Perot very well could have taken some of the Republican votes or maybe some of the Democrat votes or a combination of the two because he got quite a few votes. And that would be the reason why there was not a majority that year when Clinton became president. There was not a majority of votes that went for one candidate. We had a president elected from less than a majority of the voters. Isn't that kind of silly? Wouldn't you rather have a system where the majority of voters wanted one particular candidate? That would be nice. Not necessarily representing any particular party, because a lot of times people might find themselves aligning with someone like the Democrat candidate if they didn't know that that was a Democrat. If we did not know that, because right now we may have a family that of Republicans and one person says, you know what, the Democrats aligning more with what I want, I'm going to vote Democrat. And I mean, it could obviously go the other way too, but if that's the case, then why do we need to label? Why do we have to label things? Labels are so last century, last millennium even, right? Why do we need to label people as Republican or Democrat? Why can't we just label people as voters and according to their voter status, whether or not they're a voter or they're a non-voter? Vote for the candidate you want. That's a much better way. Now, I'm going to add one more little thought here. I've kind of mentioned a whole bunch of things, but one thing that I am a big stickler on, and I guess you could say I'm kind of old school in this mentality, is that you don't need to hate whoever the opposing presidential candidates are. I know a lot of people recently, because it is 2020, have bought into the idea that Biden is sleepy. Biden hasn't done anything in his 47 years in office. He's going to get in there. He's senile, whatever. Choose your adjectives. And that Trump is a sexist, racist, fascist, whatever. Choose your adjectives there too. But there are people on the other side that are hell-bent on making their case of why they hate that other person and why they do not need to be the president. And I understand preferring somebody, but demonizing that person because you just do not like their politics, or you do not like the way that the media has portrayed them, or you do not like them because that they, whatever. You don't like one thing they said. Whether it was something that they said when it was trendy back in the day when they were running for political office like the president 20 or 30 years ago, or if it's something they said when they were a reality TV host, it doesn't matter. People need to understand that if a president is elected, there is a certain amount of respect that goes with that position. I was talking to someone today at work who told me that they refuse to respect Trump simply because he's the president. They don't like what he stands for. He's a racist, he's a fascist, whatever. Fill in the blank. I'm sure you know people like them if you are not someone who shares in those thoughts yourself. My main point here regarding this is he was still elected. Whether or not you believe he stole the election, that's a different issue altogether. The fact of the matter is, he was sworn into office. He became the president of the United States. I'm not saying you can't make fun of him. I will pretty much make fun of anybody. I'll make fun of both Trump and Biden, and I don't discriminate against one or the other. I make fun of my colleagues that I work with. I make fun of myself. I joke around. I laugh. That's just who I am. I like to have fun. Even my closest friends, I will joke around with and heckle. Maybe it's because I'm male. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm an old school male. I don't know if younger school males do this or not. But what I can tell you is that it doesn't matter if I voted for Trump or if I voted for Biden or if I voted for a third party. If the president were to come to town and come to my workplace, if I did not vote for him or her, I am not going to disrespect that person simply because I did not vote for them and I thought that they stood against everything that I believe in. I would make sure my appearance is as good as possible. When they came to my workplace, I would be respectful and quiet and smile, and I would say, yes, Mr. President, no, Mr. President. I would be very respectful because I believe that the position of the president and the role of the president is one that is very important that we should respect regardless of who is in that position. Doesn't matter if it's one of the Bushes, if it's Clinton, if it's Obama, if it's Trump, if it's Biden. It doesn't matter who it is. If that person is elected, they deserve your respect. Whether you like them personally or not, they're representing the leader, the face of the country, and that deserves respect. The world looks at us, and if we do not respect the President of the United States for ourselves, we don't respect that person, then it speaks very poorly of us. Now, I don't say that you have to agree with everything the president stands for. Not at all. By all means, disagree with the president. It's a free country. You're allowed to do that. But what I don't think you should do is outwardly, when other countries are talking and making deals with our president, or we're doing things with our other friends, to demonize and speak so terrible of our own president. Now, I understand joking around, but just believing that they're the worst possible person or kind of person, I don't think there's much of it speaks very poorly to me when I hear someone being that disrespectful, especially when I hear them very, very openly against any person and speaking up against them in a public forum in a very disrespectful manner. I understand if they misspeak, if they say something goofy, if they talk about injecting bleach, if they talk about hairy legs and how people used to rub his hairy legs. I don't care. What I do care about is respecting the position of the president, even though we can joke or we can even disagree with him. And I'm not saying don't protest. By all means, if you disagree with somebody enough and you want to protest what they stand for, hey, by all means do it, but do it peacefully. But regardless, disagree with the president all you want, but I think that the position of president and the role of the president still deserves respect. But that is something that seems to be going away in the younger generation this day and age. The younger generation doesn't seem to respect anything unless they absolutely align with it. And that's a shame. It speaks very poorly about how they listen to their elders and what the elders have gone through, because you don't see very many great-grandparents or grandparents, elderly people, completely just going completely crazy because they hate somebody so badly and they think they are going to destroy the country. I don't see that as happening. Unfortunately, we have a generation that's coming up, these new Gen Z people, or whatever the name of them is, and they are just not showing respect to anything unless they particularly agree with it or align with it. And we need to actually understand each other, and we need to respect each other's thoughts and opinions, regardless of what it's about.